Okay, so for the recording, it's Deb from Louisville, and I will be presenting today. The title of my talk is Less is More, and the subtitle is What I Learned When I Decided to Join Josie on his 40-day fast for Gaza. So I'm here to share this experience that I've had over the past few months. It's not something I share with anyone anymore because when I've tried sharing it, it's mostly just met with resistance instead of curiosity. So, Heart to Heart seems like the right place to share it. It had a profound effect on me. Um, and it wasn't what I expected. Looking back, the timing that led to my experience, everything that was going on in my life, it was all perfect. It all lined up for me to be open to what I was about to learn. I believe in timing, even when it seems like everything's happening at the same time and it doesn't seem fair. I think it's for a reason, and it's because things are so much more connected than we realize. And if we're looking, we can see the next step being presented to us. And this was my step. So the first part of the year of 2025 was filled with challenges for me, some heartbreak, job loss, lots of twists and turns. And I knew that I needed a little time to heal from all those things. And I had that time because I was out of work. I had the support that I needed, and I was doing my part in the process, which was rest, meditation, yoga, journaling, and all those things helped. Basically, it got me ready for what was coming next on my healing journey. So one day during a phone call with Joe Z, after I'd finished talking about me, I asked him, is there anything that you need to talk about? And what he wanted to talk about started me on this leg of my journey. So he'd been fasting for Gaza for 40 days, and I knew this already, but the 40 days had long passed, and he was still going. Why? Why in the world would someone keep fasting? Because he felt so good, he said, because his body was telling him that this experience was healthy. He couldn't stop talking about it. I was already aware of his fast. I'd even been to Loose Leaf Hollow during it, but I just never really heard his words until that phone call. I suppose I was ready. I was only a few days back from a trip up north to visit my brother, and that trip showed me where I was a little bit off balance in my life and how I wanted to live more intentionally and how to do it. So, like me, my brother lives by himself. Unlike me, he never skimps on making the most amazing homemade meals. My brother is lean and fit and active, and he doesn't deny himself any enjoyment while at the same time practicing discipline. He swims in the lake in front of his house every day. He runs and he bikes and he fishes. And when he eats, he eats. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't work at his computer. He eats. He picks herbs from his planter box. He marinates his chicken for 12 hours. He adds all the ingredients that I sometimes skip simply because I'm cooking for just me. My brother lives as intentionally as a Buddhist monk, but he's not. He's a Catholic boy. He's a conservative, a dad, an outdoorsman, and an engineer. Everything he does is intentional, whether it's for fun or for work, whatever he's doing that thing. He's not wishing he was doing something else. And he's built the exact life that he wants to live, and his enjoyment of it shows. And of course, I already knew how my brother was. I grew up with him. But on this visit, I saw his way of living. I really saw it. So, back to my conversation with Joe. What he was saying suddenly made sense to me. I felt drawn to it, not driven. Another distinction that Joe likes to point out. Pay attention to what you're being drawn to. I realized I had lost touch with my body and all of its messages and signals. I lived a pretty healthy life, but I am deep into middle age and my waistline agreed. So the very next day, I began my own fast. I should mention I have a degree in nutrition. What I've observed over a lifetime of watching nutrition and diet advice change is that we so complicate a simple issue. We try to trick our metabolism to lose weight. We follow every new way of eating when we really just need to follow what Michael Pollan said in his documentary. Eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. So, like Joe, I began the fast with the intention of sitting in solidarity with those who are suffering in Gaza without enough to eat. I thought about the photos of those who were starving as my body adjusted to not eating whenever I wanted. I imagined the pain they must feel and how easy I had it. This is what got me through those first few days. But after that, it became something else, something very big, a profoundly spiritual experience. So, what does fasting for 40 days mean? I followed Joe's example of eating one meal each day. Upon waking, I drank 1 cup of black coffee, which was not my usual way of drinking it. And then I ate my one complete meal for lunch between noon and 2. And that was it. I was finished with all eating until I started again the next day. So for the first few days, I ate generously. I was worried I wouldn't be able to make it through to the next day without getting terribly hungry or losing my resolve. But it didn't take long for my body to relax into a rhythm. I ate less and I worried almost not at all. I ticked off the days on my calendar one by one. I remember I was about a week in and I was driving home and I was thinking, oh, good, I get to eat in 2 hours. 2 hours? If I had had to wait 2 hours before this experience, my brain would have told me that I was cranky and lightheaded. I got to the point where my body was telling me what it needed, and I could actually hear it. And what that turned out to be was a whole lot less than I'd guessed. There was also a patient aspect that I discovered, not needing to run to food, trusting that my body was okay, even if I was hungry. I took food off my to-do list, except for my one meal. And that created so much space to focus on other things. I found myself not thinking about food very much, except for planning the next day's meal in order to not waste food. This planning became part of my sacred meal practice, and that's what I started calling it, my sacred meal. Preparing my sacred meal became an act of love toward myself. Preparing the meal was as much of a treat as was eating it. I began to look forward to the whole process. My respect for the food itself grew as well. Planning meals wisely, combining ingredients so as not to waste, and in the process, creating some of the best meals I've ever cooked in my whole life. Putting all my effort into one meal meant I had to focus on nutrition. I considered my fruit and vegetable intake, my proteins, my fibers, but it also meant I was going to choose a meal that completely excited me. If I'm only getting to do this once per day, I'm going to make it count. I'm going to make it special. I'm not of the generation who endured a world war or a serious depression. I've never truly had to live without alongside my countrymates. And I'm sure this has affected my lack of respect for what food is supposed to be, nourishment and medicine, not fast food drive-throughs and all-you-can-eat buffets. Okay, so now I'm doing the fasting thing, and here's what happened. I rarely got hungry. I stopped taking naps. My energy became consistent all day long. Even after my big meal, I did not go into a food coma or feel sleepy. My body just went to work and welcomed the nourishment. I did, however, have to face issues of why I wanted to eat when I wasn't hungry. Loneliness, number one reason. Food was my way of covering up that familiar pain. So I faced it. I felt it. I felt lonely. I felt antsy. I felt unsatisfied. And those feelings passed. They became less and less. And when they returned, I had a little more confidence that they would pass again. And they did. None of this had anything to do with willpower. Willpower never worked for me. I don't think it works for most people. This was a sacred practice. Basically, I worked on making friends with hunger. I cleaned up my relationship with food. I changed my habits to support this new lifestyle. Food became a spiritual experience for me, true nourishment and medicine for my body and my mind. By having less, it became precious. By having less, my body reached autophagy. Autophagy is the point, usually 16 hours or so after you stop eating, where your cells start to break down the bad parts and digest them, recycling them into fuel, getting rid of damaged and unnecessary parts, promoting cell repair, reducing inflammation, and preventing disease cells from taking over. This is what our bodies were designed to do. Probably what they were doing back when we were hunting and foraging for our food, when we had long spans of time between successful hunts. Our bodies are designed to last, to recycle, to function. So autophagy is cool, and I could spend time just talking about that, but that's not even the biggest impact I experienced. There were two more: psychological and somatic. First, the psychological. As I've mentioned before, I suffer from serious depression. And, I've worked hard on that with meditation and self-work, and I was in a good place. But fasting, it took it to a whole new level. My brain became so much clearer. My thoughts were lighter. My spirits were joyous almost all the time. I became so in touch with what was happening in my body that my mind could finally relax. Freeing up space, not thinking about food, and my body not always working to digest it allowed me to be more creative, to be present in the moment. And then the second impact, the somatic healing effects. I did not expect this. I don't have a lot of research on how all this works, but here's what I believe. Fasting came along just at the time when my body was ready for it. By eating once per day, once my body had finished its digestion work, it happens usually 4 to 6 hours after eating, my body could rest, really rest. I started sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night, a truly restorative sleep. My body seemed to be able to let go of emotional events after incorporating the lessons. Emotionally, I began to feel lighter and happier. I started looking at things differently. And when you change how you look at things, the things you look at change. My emotional triggers even began to soften. I started respecting my triggers instead of trying to fix them. I gave them space to be there and compassion for the pain that they caused me. So here's an example of that. I was at yoga class, which I do all the time, and yoga's always been a sacred practice, but also a really vulnerable space for me. I mean, you are literally in vulnerable, exposed positions. And on this day, the class instructor decided it would be funny to start making sexualized comments about the whole class. They thought they were being funny, but I was so triggered. No longer feeling comfortable in my tight clothes, bending over in a class with men and women. So I would usually beat myself up about being so sensitive. This time was different. On the drive home, I thought about how plenty of other women, just like me, have been taken advantage of physically, and how they were likely triggered as well. I extended compassion to myself for what I suffered before going straight to criticizing the trigger. I took a few days off from that class and I didn't feel guilty. I realized that sometimes this happens in this particular class, and maybe the problem wasn't me. I ended up leaving that studio where I had been practicing for years, and I joined a community center for my workouts. The level of professionalism at my new space is amazing. I never feel threatened. The instructors are professional, and they all seem to be in a good space in their own lives. I learned that some triggers are opportunities for healing, and some are simply saying, you should put yourself in a better, healthier situation than this one. So this was a huge change for me. I've always looked upon my triggers with disdain, like a character flaw that I'd better start working on. This time, I listened to my trigger. I let myself rest after it happened, and then I decided what was best for me. And then I did even more healing work in my dreams. I had so many important dreams during the fast because I was resting so well. But here's a big one. I've had a recurring dream for years and years and years. And in that dream, I have to descend from a tall staircase or a rooftop or something. And the first step is always way out of reach. It's terrifying. I never figure out how to get down to get to where I need to be. But this dream was different. This time, I was on top of a roof trying to get down, and I asked someone for help, which in itself was big. But the help didn't come in the way that I thought. I thought the person in my dream, happened to be a man, would catch me as I was certain I would fall when I tried to descend. But he didn't. He talked to me. He suggested a different approach, one which required me to trust gravity for just a moment before I made it to the next step. And I made it. It felt amazing. I conquered the challenge that had been plaguing my dreams for years. So when I woke up, I sat for a long time with a feeling I was left with. I wrote down all the details I could remember. I wanted to keep this feeling imprinted on my psyche. The feeling was specific. It was healing and it was growth. I can even call that feeling up whenever I need to.
Mm.
So I didn't intend to give this talk to convince others to fast. And I don't believe all this healing happened only due to my eating. It's just a culmination of the work I've put in. But it came along at just the time that my body wanted it. It has been such a deep spiritual and physical experience that I wanted to share it. It's partly about having less and loving it more, having less with higher quality, respecting what you do have so much that it becomes spiritual to experience it. It brings to mind Susan Packard's fantastic talk about being less busy. This is part of the same idea. My 40 days of eating less was becoming 40 days of spending less, of owning less, and of wanting less. The lessons I was learning were spilling over into other parts of my life. I looked at my spending and I noticed all that I wasn't spending on food. And that made me think about other spending, other consumption that had become mindless. I looked at my streaming services. I thought about how watching TV in the evening made it really tough not to snack while watching, and I was fasting. So why was watching TV not enough to be satisfying? Why did I also need to eat? Was it because I wasn't truly entertained? Was I still lacking? So, like eating a well-balanced meal so that my body didn't have cravings, how could I change my entertainment to be more fulfilling? So I canceled all my streaming services except for PBS, and I started reading more instead. All the books I've consumed, glorious, glorious works of art that I might have missed out on because I was watching Resident Alien for the third time. Next, I looked around my home to see what was there, what I looked past every day. I decided to sell some furniture, some beautiful pieces from my living room that I'd clung to because when I got them, I had very few things. Now things are different. I want the space to reflect me. So even though those pieces are beautiful, now that they're gone and living happily elsewhere, my space is more intentionally me. How happy I feel every time I walk into that room now. How many other things was I clinging to? How would it feel to let them go? Either to give someone else joy or get money from selling them. I sold boxes and boxes of books that I wasn't going to reread. So now I spend that cash to get new books. I started thinking about the most precious things, the pretty good things, and the things that were just clogging up my time and my space and my energy. And what else could I apply this lesson to? Even bigger issues like loneliness? Was I lonely because sometimes I wasn't getting the quality and depth of interactions that my soul craved? Hell yeah. What choices could I make to get the most out of my interactions? The interactions I truly need, being a single person living alone. The things I agree to socialize in should bring me joy. Other things might require a different way of looking at them to find joy in the things we all have to do. But the more in touch I became with my own self, listening to what my body was telling me, nourishing my body and my soul, I began interacting differently. And what about depression, anxiety? What if I could make friends with all of it? Welcoming hunger taught me that I don't actually feel hungry all that often once my body is nourished. And if I nourish my soul, could I welcome depression, knowing it was not a permanent state? Could I welcome change, change that scared me, knowing that, like hunger, it was inevitable and likely temporary? Living in a first world country, I don't have to worry about a real threat of hunger. I'm so fortunate. But all the lessons that we have missed. I read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse twice, once in college and again a few years ago. One of Siddhartha's talents is to be able to go without food, to fast. And I appreciated it, but I never really got it. And I don't even know if I get it now, since I'm not starving, living on the street as a beggar. But I look upon the skill differently. And then during my fast, I happened to be reading Dostoevsky, and I found solidarity for this less is more lesson in this quote. For how can a man shake off his habits? What can become of him if he is in such bondage to the habit of satisfying the innumerable desires he has created for himself? He is isolated, and what concern has he with the rest of society? They have, they have succeeded in accumulating a greater mass of objects, but the joy in the world has grown less. So I finished my 40 days of fasting, which had become so much more. During those 40 days, some days were easy, some were really hard. A few times I felt sick with a headache, but I learned from all of it and I kept going. After I finished, I loosened my rules on eating, but much of the practice has remained by choice. Most days I still have my sacred meal. I take better care with what I put in my body as nourishment. I still read more than I watch TV. My fitness and my energy are better. I'm stronger and I'm healthier. My mind is happier, all from less. What surprises me is that this is a new tool for my healthy life toolbox. I can bring it back whenever I get off track. Life gets too busy and my mind is tired from trying so hard. In an American culture where we can have whatever we want, whenever we want, is this gluttony what's making us so unhappy? Have we lost our appreciation by having too much of everything? And did the starving souls in Gaza, half a world away, teach me this lesson? Thank you.